Hey guys, Paul here. So today I wanted to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! And its complicated relationship with nostalgia. Because I think that this has obviously been a community conversation that kind of gets more intense every year. If you think about the way that nostalgia technically works, that sort of makes sense. But yeah, there's this sort of conflict or tug of war between, how much should Yu-Gi-Oh! Stay true and faithful to its origins and the monsters, the characters, the motifs that made it famous to begin with, and how much should it evolve and change and grow and try to shed that coat and leave it behind? And can the two coexist? Well, I have some thoughts on the matter. This would normally be like some video essay with a bunch of great B-roll and music and narrative structure and stuff, but I think it's just easier for me to talk about it here, and I do want to hear what people have to say. So I think it all kind of starts with DM or Duel Monsters, and kind of to some degree GX, but yeah, just those iconic monsters, the Yugi, Kaiba, Joey, Merrick, Pegasus, Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, Red Eyes, whatever other kind of iconic old Yu-Gi-Oh card that you think of. There's just that whole set of characters and monsters in that anime series. That is what got a lot of people into Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's what they think of. They think of Yu-Gi-Oh! They think of Yugi's hair, they think of Exodia, they think of Obliterate. And also the sets that were kind of released around that time, like LOB or Starter Deck Yugi, Starter Deck Kaiba, Magic Ruler, Metal Raiders, those sorts of things. The way that the game was played back then, this kind of slow, methodical, sort of back and forth chess match sort of thing is what a lot of times people will compare it to. That's a rose-tinted way of looking at it, I would say, because nostalgia, like with Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like with anything else, right? Like nostalgia is oftentimes kind of going to be rose-tinted. It feels a little nicer than it was because that point in your life was probably a little bit nicer than your point in your life now, right? Like thanks to capitalism and growing up and all these things, we're all a lot more jaded and cynical. For instance, old school Yu-Gi-Oh had its problems gameplay-wise and anime-wise. I would say that there were always expensive Yu-Gi-Oh cards. There was always a meta game that was played at least at tournaments. You might have been sort of shielded from it because you were playing on the playground, but it definitely existed. Similarly with the anime, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters is great. It really is an amazing work, but it also doesn't have the best told story. The pacing's a little weird. Even the animation isn't always perfect if you're thinking about the anime, right? A lot of future Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, I would say, did storytelling and world building a lot better than Duel Monsters did. I think that 5Ds and Zexal, at least for me personally, those two really take the cake for being better constructed stories and just stronger narratives. But still, it's Yugi and Kaiba that are going to get the popular attention whenever it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh merchandising, Yu-Gi-Oh advertisement, all of that stuff. And when you look at how the trading card game has sort of evolved, that's where you can really, really see this conflict at play the most, because Yu-Gi-Oh's card game just doesn't even remotely resemble what it was 20 years ago. It's not even close, right? The game's pace is much faster. The way that effects and stuff kind of just resolve and cascade into more effects, and boards are built. You're not normal summoning Celtic Guardian and setting a spellbinding circle. It's just not really happening. But anyway, where I see this get the most tumultuous, I would say, is sometimes people get a little upset when Yugi and Kaiba are featured on every product, and that can get a little annoying, or when Dark Magician and Blue Eyes and stuff like that and Red Eyes get more support. There was a period of time where I think people were really starting to get sick of it. It was maybe 2017, 18. I don't know. I remember when they sort of first revitalized Blue Eyes and Dark Magician in those sets Shining Victory, and there was the other set that had Dark Magician. Those sets, I think people were excited about it, but then after a while, when they were on every 10 and stuff, people were kind of okay, why is it always going to be Yuki and Kaiba? Where's Jaden? Where's Yusei? Where's Yuma? And you can actually even see it even in product design. We never really got starter decks for many 5Ds characters. Yusei got one, but we never really got anybody else. Technically, if you fast forward 15 years, then Jack did eventually get a structure deck. But yeah, you didn't get structure decks for Yuma and Kite and Shark and stuff, which those would have been really cool. Those characters don't really get a lot of attention product-wise. And also, I think that people, there is, and I've talked about this in other videos, there is this misdirection that sometimes can occur with marketing that I've sometimes taken issue with in Yu-Gi-Oh, which is that if you have Yugi and Kaiba and these 10 of dueling mirrors or whatever, right? it kind of gives this impression that what a person is going to be getting into with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the Yu-Gi-Oh! They know and love. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Kaiba dueling like they did in Battle City. But the way that the game works now, it's not that. Like that's really not the Yu-Gi-Oh! That you're gonna get. Like we said, the pace is faster, the cards are different. And it's also kind of why you'll see these new lore archetypes like the Fallen of Albaz story or Sky Strikers or World Legacy or most recently Diabell Star. They're cool and a lot of the core Yu-Gi-Oh! Players get into them, but what I've also noticed is that like it's sort of created this divide where I think people almost begin to resent the anime because they feel like it's really not all that interesting at all. Like I would rather get an anime about the branded story, they'll say. And I do think it's good that we're getting that finally. Like the fact that we are getting these like Chronicle series or whatever they're called is a good thing. I don't think that they're really gonna be what like revitalizes Yu-Gi-Oh! Or really even introduces it to many more people. The Chronicle things feel like they're more fan service for the core card game crowd. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I'm looking forward to seeing these monthly sort of lore dump animated stories, however they decide to make them, or if they're voice acted or not, I'm not so sure. I'm still kind of curious about that. But I do think that like when it comes to bringing in new people and bringing in new eyes, oftentimes what it takes is to sort of look back at Yugi and Kaiba once again. They're who get all the merch, right? Like whenever you see these monster figures, it's always Dark Magician and Blue Eyes and Red Eyes, and it can get a little tiring. We're finally, just in the last few years, beginning to get more GX monsters and a few more 5Ds monsters. Even a couple of Zexal monsters are squeaking their way in to some of these like figure makers. But like, it's taken a while, and I think that has caused a little bit of resentment. By the way, sorry if my voice sounds weird. I'm still coming over a little bit of a flu right now, but yeah, so I think that's kind of become like this, there's just this tug of war, like how much should Yu-Gi-Oh! Rely on its past and like defer back to that, have Yugi and Kaiba's voices and faces and monsters, versus how much should they embrace the new game? Like I think that part of the reason why they go back to Yugi and Kaiba is because that's what sells, and that's what will like kind of push products off shelves, and they maybe don't have as much faith that your interest in Diabell Star will be as high as your interest in Dark Magician. And like truth be told, I mean, the numbers kind of show that. The analogy I thought of for it actually was something almost more akin to like a parent and child relationship, where if you kind of grew up in a, we'll say a mostly normal family, you're used to like your parents, they raised you. So how much do you owe your parents? You know what I mean? Like how much of your life do you owe to them? When your parents are raising you, they can kind of decide where you go to school and what thing, you know, what things you're given, what stuff you buy, and maybe like who you're friends with and stuff. But as you get older, it gets a little bit more like, do your parents get to pick your career? Do they get to pick where you go to school? Who you get to be friends with as an adult? How close you live to your parents still? Things like that feels like, you know, nostalgia is Yu-Gi-Oh's parent that kind of tries to hang on and prevents it from doing more. And Yu-Gi-Oh is maybe a rebellious kid who wants to do a little bit more, but also is like, still feels like it owes something to its parents. To fast forward this conversation a little bit more to the present, one thing I like that Konami is doing is they made those recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Retro games social media accounts where they seem to be, for now, they're just talking about that Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection game, which is coming out here in, I guess, a few weeks, like in February, I think. But yeah, like, and I'm wondering if they're gonna be using that account maybe to like post more about Time Wizard and Edison format, things like that maybe like other merch that's kind of old school inspired, I'm not really sure. But I think that creating a divide there makes a lot of sense. So that way people who are interested in like the older school style of Yu-Gi-Oh! Can get a page that caters more to that. You don't have to deal with people who are in the comment sections of like the regular TCG posts that are just like, Synchros kill this game, or bring back Mirror Force and Spellbinding Circle under some post that's promoting Supreme Darkness. It's just kind of like this big disconnect that happens there. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that that's like a good way to sort of divvy it up. The fact that Konami is using Time Wizard to support some of these older snapshot formats is good. I still think about like, you know, if a reboot would truly be a good thing for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or not. I mean an anime reboot. There's also the card game reboot idea, but that's like a totally different conversation. And that's kind of what I want to know. What do you guys think? Do you feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs, you know, how much should Yu-Gi-Oh! Be like leaning into nostalgia versus how much should it be like doing new things? I still think we need a new Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that's not like one of the rush ones, not like Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s and Go Rush. They're fine, I'm not saying they're bad, but like a traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that kind of moves forward from whatever Vrains was, whatever new setting they want to explore with that. would be nice because it feels like the card game is a bit barren without an anime running alongside it. But then some people think like, okay, just reboot, Duelist Kingdom, Battle City, just make it like that instead. I'll be honest, I don't know which one is the better answer. So let's just think about it, critically speaking, what do you feel? How much Yu-Gi-Oh! Nostalgia does it take to kind of like keep this game alive, or can this game survive without said nostalgia? I think you gotta have at least some degree of it, but it's really hard to say. So probably just always going to be a contest that Yu-Gi-Oh's got, to like an inner fight, an internal conflict that the games are going to have to deal with. I think if I had to give an actual take on it though, because I don't want to just end this video with like, well, that's just the two sides and how it is, I will say that I do believe a Yu-Gi-Oh anime like Duelist Kingdom, Battle City reboot would do wonders for the brand's popularity, but I think that they would need to kind of be accompanied with some sort of a reboot in the card game. Otherwise, you'll get a bunch of new people who are interested, and then we'll just get turned off when they see what modern Yu-Gi-Oh looks like. I like modern Yu-Gi-Oh myself, but I know that a lot of other people probably don't. As for figures and merch and other things, I see why they stick with Yugi and Kaiba, but honestly, I have so many Dark Magician and Red Eyes figures, I don't want to see another one. So it's kind of weird. It's like, I want a new anime, and I don't mind if it's a reboot or not, but like, I think for the growth of Yu-Gi-Oh, it's got to look to the past, but for like the evolution of Yu-Gi-Oh, it's got to look for the future, which I guess isn't really a very profound thing to say at the end of the day. That's kind of a plain, basic opinion, but I don't know. You guys will probably have better things to say about it than I will, so I'll be down below in the comments reading as always. It's gonna be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, by the way, before anyone asks, this is Dark Magician Girl on the sweater. I got this from Think New, Think in You. Shout out to them, they make some really great Yu-Gi-Oh designs. Even goes to show like nostalgia sells, right? They're not gonna be making a Nightmare Apprentice one. It's always gonna be Dark Magician Girl, so kind of how it works. All right, see you guys in the next one. Fast turn.